Welcome to GovConBiz, where we explore the intersection of ethics, innovation, and soul in government contracting and AI. I'm your host, Linda Rawson. Today, we're diving into the ethics of prediction. Because when machines forecast our futures, they're not just calculating, they're shaping destiny. Let's begin with a simple truth. Prediction is power. When an AI system predicts your likelihood of committing a crime, defaulting on a loan, succeeding in a job, or needing medical care, it's not just making a guess. It's shaping your future. It's influencing how others perceive you, how resources are allocated, and what opportunities you're afforded. Prediction isn't passive, it's active. It doesn't just reflect reality, it creates it. Prediction is not neutral. It's a form of influence disguised as foresight. And here's the deeper insight. The power of prediction lies not in the accuracy, but in its authority. When a machine says, "This person is high risk," that label carries weight. It can trigger surveillance, denial, rejection, and even punishment. Let's talk about a case of an algorithm in criminal justice. The case is called the Compass algorithm. In Broward County, Florida, a man named Eric Loomis was sentenced to prison in part because of a risk assessment score generated by an AI system called Compass. Compass is an abbreviation for Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. This algorithm predicted Loomis was at high risk of reoffending. The judge cited this score when deciding against probation and opted for a harsher sentence. But here's the twist. Loomis and his legal team weren't allowed to see the algorithm and how it worked. The company behind Compass claimed its formula was proprietary. So Loomis was labeled high risk by a black box, an opaque system whose logic couldn't be challenged in court. Later investigations revealed that Compass was biased. It disproportionately flagged black defendants as high risk compared to female or white defendants, even when their criminal histories were similar. This story isn't about a flawed algorithm. It's about how prediction becomes authority. The AI didn't just reflect Loomis's past, it shaped his future. It influenced a judge's decision, altered the course of a life, and did so under the guise of objectivity. The machine's label carried institutional power. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a sentence. And often, the people affected have no idea how the prediction was made. They don't know what data was used or how to challenge it. This is where the ethical stakes rise. Because predictive systems operate in the future, but they're built on the past. They use historical data to forecast what's next, and if that data is biased, incomplete, or exclusionary, the predictions will be too. So what happens when we scale predictive power without soul? We replicate harm, we automate injustice, we turn probability into destiny. Let's bring in the soul print framework to illuminate what ethical prediction could look like. The origin intention, the seed. Was the system built to empower users or to control them? Was it designed to support humans flourishing or to optimize institutional efficiency? Consider the case of Amazon's hiring algorithm. Trained on historical resumes, it learned to downgrade female applicants for technical roles, Why? Because past hiring patterns favored men. The system wasn't malicious. It was efficient. But efficiency without empathy is a dangerous seed. It optimized for replication, not transformation. Ethical prediction begins with intention. Not how can we automate judgment, but how can we amplify dignity? Ethical boundaries, the guardian. Does the system acknowledge uncertainty? Does it avoid overreach? Are there limits to what it's allowed to predict, and how are those predictions used? In the criminal justice system, Compass predicted risk based on past data, but studies showed it plagued Black defendants as high risk at nearly twice the rate of white defendants, even when controlling for prior offenses. And yet, judges use these scores to determine sentencing. No appeal, no transparency, no boundary. Ethical systems must know when not to predict. They must honor the unknown. They must protect the human right to surprise. Relational logic, the mirror. Does the system engage users transparently? Does it reflect their complexity or reduce them to a score? Takes credit scoring algorithms. They often penalize applicants for living in certain zip codes, having non-traditional employment, or lacking credit history. Those scores don't reflect character. They reflect correlation. And correlation is not care. Ethical prediction must be relational. It must show its work. It must invite dialogue. It must mirror the fullness of a life, not flatten it to a metric. Evolution path, the phoenix. Is the system learning from lived experience? Is it evolving towards justice, or just refining its ability to forecast? Facial recognition systems trained on biased data sets misidentify Black women up to 34% more often than white men. And yet, these systems are deployed in airports, police departments, and public spaces. They're evolving, but not toward equity. They're refining, but not reflecting. Ethical systems must rise from their own ashes. They must learn from harm. They must evolve toward repair. Energetic signature, the scribe. What does it feel like to be predicted? Does the experience leave users feeling empowered, seen, and respected, or judged, flattened, and invisible? Ask the gig workers flagged as low reliability by an opaque algorithm. Ask the student denied financial aid by a predictive model. Ask the patient whose care was deprioritized by a cost efficiency forecast. Prediction leaves a residue, a feeling, a story. Ethical systems must write stories of belonging, surveillance, not punishment. We need to design AI that honors the future. Prediction is a sacred art. It touches the future, and the future is not something to dominate. It's something to honor. When we design predictive systems, we are making choices about what kind of world we want to live in. We're deciding whose futures matter, whose stories are heard, and whose possibilities are protected. So let's ask the more profound questions. What futures are our systems enabling or erasing? What assumptions are we scaling? What legacies are we leaving behind? Because prediction isn't just about probability, it's about possibility. And when we design with soul, we shape futures worth trusting. When algorithms forecast harm, who gets caught in the future? Let's take a closer look at predictive policing, a technology that utilizes historical crime data to forecast where crimes are likely to occur and who might be involved. On paper, it sounds efficient. Allocate resources, prevent harm, optimize patrols. But in practice, predictive policing often reinforces systemic bias, criminalizes poverty, and erodes trust in law enforcement. In Los Angeles, the LAPD launched a predictive policing initiative called Operation Laser. LASER stands for Los Angeles Strategic Extraction and Restoration. It uses historical arrest data and reported incidents to identify chronic offenders and hotspots for crime. Officers were then sent to these areas with increased surveillance and enforcement. But here's the problem. The data was deeply biased. It reflected decades of over-policing in low-income, predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. So when the algorithm said, "Send more patrols here," it wasn't predicting future crimes. It was amplifying past injustice. Another system, PredPol, was used in cities like Oakland and Santa Cruz. It predicted where crimes might occur based on past reports. But again, the data was skewed. Property crimes in wealthier areas often went unreported or unrecorded, while minor infractions in poorer neighborhoods were logged in detail. The algorithm didn't see this imbalance. It just reinforced it. And when we examine it through the soul print lens, the deeper story begins to emerge. The seed, origin, intention. Predictive policing systems were often born from a desire to control, not to heal. The founding intention was rooted in surveillance, deterrent, and risk management, not justice, equity, or community care. If the seed was planted in fear, the fruit carries that energy. And when the data used to train these systems reflects decades of over-policing in marginalized communities, the predictions simply replicate that harm. You cannot plant seeds of punishment and expect blossoms of peace. Many predictive policing tools were deployed without clear ethical boundaries. No community consent, no transparency in how predictions are made, no safeguards against reinforcing social bias. The guardian was missing, and without it, the system drifted, turning probability into punishment and suspicion into policy. When ethics are optional, harm becomes inevitable. Relational logic, the mirror. Predictive policing doesn't treat all communities equally. It reflects historical data, but that data is already distorted by decades of bias. So the mirror is cracked. It doesn't show reality, it shows a feedback loop. People in over-policed neighborhoods are more likely to be predicted as future offenders, not because they're more criminal, but because they've been more surveilled. This is relational logic gone wrong. The system doesn't engage with people, it profiles them. Evolution path, the phoenix. Some cities have paused or banned predictive policing. Others are revising their models. But true evolution requires more than technical tweaks. It requires a rebirth of intention. What would a soul-aware Phoenix protocol look like here? Community-led data governance, transparent algorithms, restorative justice metrics, feedback loops that prioritize healing over control. Evolution isn't just about improving accuracy. It's about aligning and shifting to a purpose. Energetic signature, the scribe. And finally, we ask, what does it feel like to live under predictive policing? For many, it feels like being watched, judged, and reduced to a data point. It feels like the future is already written and not in your favor. That energetic signature is characterized by mistrust, fear, and a sense of invisibility. And that emotional residue matters. It shapes how people relate to institutions, to technology, and to their sense of possibility. Predictive policing isn't a tool, it's a story. And when we listen to its soul, we hear a call to redesign, to move from control to care, from surveillance to stewardship, from prediction to possibility. Because the future isn't something to forecast, it's something to honor. The best way to predict the future is to create it, said Peter Drucker. Prediction is a sacred act. It touches the future, not with certainty, but with influence. It's not just a number on the screen, a whisper of what could be. A forecast, a label, a possibility, and every prediction carries weight. When a machine says, this person is high risk, it's not just describing the world, it's shaping it. It's deciding who gets watched, who gets helped, who gets hired, or doesn't get hired. Prediction isn't passive, it's active. It doesn't just reflect reality, it creates it. And in that creation, there's power. Not the power of truth, but the power of authority. So we must ask, whose future is being touched? Whose story is being written? And who gets to hold the pen? I want to invite you to honor uncertainty, embrace humility, and design with reverence. Prediction isn't just about probability, it's about possibility. It's not just a technical act, it's a moral one, because every prediction shapes a path. Every algorithm draws a boundary, and every system, no matter how advanced, reflects the values of its creators. And let's design with reverence for the lives we touch, the futures we shape, and the stories we may never fully know. For developers, audit your predictive logic. Ask not just what it predicts, but why, for whom, and at what cost. For leaders, ask what futures your systems are enabling or erasing. Whose voices are amplified? What possibilities are being nurtured and which are being denied? For everyone, demand transparency, accountability, and above all, demand soul. Because a system without soul is just machinery. But a system with soul can be a mirror, a compass, and a bridge. So let's build not just with foresight, but with foresoul. Let's design systems that honor the future, not just forecast it. Thanks for joining me on GovConBiz. If this episode sparks something, share it, comment, and follow me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect. And remember, every prediction carries a legacy. Let's make it one worth trusting.